eyes and just take a little snooze. And I am running on fumes, so if I take a nod in the middle of the sermon. Whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on the journey of faith, know that you are most welcome here to receive the richness of God's love given for you. Mark Twain once said, "Most people are bothered by those passages in scriptures that they don't understand. But it's the passages that bother me are the ones I do understand." So whether you understand all the ways the Bible talks about the creating God, the Messiah, the Spirit of God, it's still a hard thing to wrap our minds around. 3 in 1, 1 in 3, all for one for all. Oh no, that can't be. The Bible isn't too much of a help when it comes either to this whole Trinity business. Because in so many gospel lessons we get Jesus talking to the Father, that he's going to the Father, and then there's the Spirit that comes down to Jesus in baptism, but then later the Spirit comes when Jesus already went to heaven, and it is enough to make your head spin. Now there are very good orthodox answers to all these questions. But even so, I scratched my head a bit, because in the end, we cannot describe the indescribable. Our best attempts to describe God, as Robert Capone once said, is like a bunch of oysters trying to describe a ballerina. We don't have the equipment to understand something so grand. It doesn't mean we shouldn't try. The best we can do is try to describe what the experience of God is like, how it sounds, how it feels, what it reminds us of. And even this can be difficult. Because some days God comes as judge, walking through our lives wearing white gloves and exposing all the messes we've made. Some days God comes as shepherd, fending off our enemies and feeding us by hand. Other times God comes as a whirlwind and blows away everything that we've known. Other days God is a brooding hen who hides us under the shelter of her wings. Some days God is a dazzling king, and other times a silent servant. And if we were to name all the ways that God comes to us, we would be here until Jesus comes back. God the teacher, the challenger, the healer, the stranger, the lover, the adversary, the yes, the no. God is many, which is at least one of the mysteries of the Trinity. And we confess that we believe in this Trinity every 7 days in the Apostles' Creed. And when we do that, we're stating in faith that we believe that God comes to us in all different ways, as different as they can be from each other. And then the other mystery is that God is one. Now, often in some sort of adult Bible study class, I hear a statement that people don't like the mean God of the Old Testament, but they really like the loving God of the New. I was the same way. But here's the thing. There cannot be one warring God of the Old Testament and a completely different, generous one later. We may experience God in contradictory ways, but that's our problem, not God's. And we can't solve it even by our fanciest diagrams. All we can do is decide whether or not to open up ourselves to a triune God, whose freedom and imagination is beyond us. And as human beings, we're created in God's image, which means that God is wonderfully diverse and that we are more alike than we think. At the heart of the mystery of the Trinity is something I think we can all at least a little bit understand, and here's our good news. At the heart of our understanding of God, as somehow 3 in 1, is the notion that you can't fully understand God without talking about relationship. That God is so full of love that there's got to be some way of talking about love shared in and through profound relationships. Some say that's why God created the cosmos and humanity in the first place, to have people to love. But the idea of Trinity goes even further, saying from the very beginning of time, the dynamic power of love is at the heart of God's identity and character. And it can only be possibly captured by thinking about love that is shared. Think about it. Can you think about love that's not shared? Normally you say, I love, and there's something else at the end of the sentence. You can never just love. There has to be an object or a person, a relationship. Even if you love gummies, that's a personal relationship. So God's essential and core being has always been a giving and receiving and sharing of love. And it's so grand that it spills out into the whole universe and invites all of us into it. Now this happened first through creation and God's series of covenants, and then finally we get to God sending God's Son in the flesh, so Jesus who had dusty hands and calloused feet, to demonstrate in word and deed just how much God loves us. And now the Spirit of God is with us now to show us God's ongoing love for everyone in this room and everyone outside this room. We are loved by a God that we can never fully wrap our minds around, and that is good news, because it means that God's love is always bigger and more inclusive and more encompassing than we can ever imagine. And we get to be a part of that kind of life-giving love with others. And we can do it by either sleeping in a box for Box City, or donating to it, or praying for it. Or maybe it's by volunteering to help tutor one of the rag story kids this summer to help them get caught up in their grades. Or it's just asking for patience when you would much rather lose your cool. It might be by taking the high road when nobody else is going to see it or give you credit. Whether it's by giving of yourself to someone who needs a phone call or a check, or just someone to sit with them in silence, the options to love are endless. So thanks be to our holy God who gives us the courage to love like that. Thanks be to God, the Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, now and forever.